Welcome to the Health Coach Nation podcast. My name is Hailey Rowe, and I'm a sales and marketing coach and LinkedIn lead generation service provider. I work with health, life, and mindset coaches and online service-based business owners to help them get more sales, shift their time to the client-generating activities instead of just the busy work, and overcome that social media overwhelm. Let's get into the show. If you're ready to take on your next paying clients, I have good news. My free 4 Basics of Client Attraction and How to Stand Out class is live at haileyrowe.com/client-attraction. In the class, you're going to learn the top 2 traits I recommend for most coaches and entrepreneurs if they really want to turn this into a career. You're going to learn how you can build demand for your services and stop getting crickets on your posts. You're going to learn the sales roadmap I used to improve my sales conversion rate and help my clients do the same. And you're going to learn so much more. So go to haileyrowe.com/client-attraction and get your copy of the class today.
Hey everyone, it's Jessica from Hailey's team. Today you are going to hear an interview Hailey did on the Process to Profit podcast, all about how to attract clients with her FAST framework. Enjoy.
When you're selling, it's more of a partnership conversation to see if someone is a fit and to see if you guys can do good things together. And it doesn't have to be all attached to, oh, I need to close the sale, I need to get the money, I need to do that kind of thing. It's more of, I'm going to be really interested in the other person and I'm going to aim to help them find some kind of solution. Welcome to the Process to Profit podcast, where we find out about key processes and productivity techniques that drive successful service-based businesses. Whether you're just starting out or looking to scale, join us as we uncover practical strategies to streamline your operations and help you make more money by boosting your profitability. Let's get started. My guest today is Hailey Rowe, also my personal business coach. Hailey is a marketing and sales strategist and coach, as well as a LinkedIn lead generation service provider. She helps service-based business owners, especially coaches, build out their client attraction process, create standout offers, and boost sales without the social media overwhelm. We all want that. Hailey shares her FAST framework, marketing, and business tips in her Health Coach Nation podcast and the Marketing Hub Facebook group. I will link both of those things for you guys to access. Named one of the top 25 coaches in Chicago and among the top 6 business podcasts for health coaches, Hailey has worked in the coaching industry and in business development marketing for startups since 2010. Her philosophy: you can have an amazing service and impact, but without a clear marketing strategy, you won't reach the people who need you most. Hailey, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here, and what a cool opportunity to be with one of my favorite clients.
You say that to all your clients. So I know that I read your bio, but why don't you tell everyone a little bit more about who you are, where you come from, what you specialize in, all of those good things.
Sure. So I had an interest in personal development and entrepreneurship at a pretty young age. I was an old soul and I didn't really know what I wanted my future to look like, but I knew that I would love to have my own business one day. And so I ended up getting some coaching certifications. I got my bachelor's in entrepreneurship. And then after college, I decided I am not ready to have my own business. So I had little side things along the way, but I just wasn't ready to take the full-time plunge. And so I worked in business development and marketing for startups, and they happen to usually be in the wellness industry, or one was like a coaching certification company and things like that. And it made me realize that a lot of these startups, I was given projects where I didn't really feel qualified to do them. It was a small team. It was moving very quickly, and you just had to figure it out. And I realized all these startups are just figuring it out as they go. And so I realized there's nothing special. They're not unicorns. It's something we just all have to do. And so there's never going to be a perfect time to take the full-time plunge in your business. And so in 2017, one of my companies that I worked for had faced a lot of delays. They weren't going to be able to open on the timeline they thought. And the entire team was let go in one day. And I decided at that point, you know what? I think I am ready to have my own business, because you're never really ready. And look at these companies. They don't know either. They're figuring it out as they go and they're adapting. And so I started to individually work with clients, and it's, what I do now. But the thing that I'm passionate about is I think a lot of people have a craft or a skill that they're really good at, but sales and marketing doesn't come naturally to them. And it didn't come naturally to me either. However, I will say I grew up a performer and I had to go on these auditions and like sell myself in a very short period of time. And so it came more naturally to me, but it wasn't the thing that I just knew everything about. And I had to learn by working at these startups and by doing courses and by having mentors. And so my passion is really helping those people who are stuck with the sales and marketing side of things and they have that gift or craft or thing that they want to do. But they don't know where to start. They don't know how to get out there. They feel really icky around sales, things like that. So that's a little bit about what I do.
Yeah, and, I can attest that you do help with all of those things. I felt, sales did not come naturally to me. I felt very icky around them. It was not something that I enjoyed doing. So, what's sort of the first step that you take when you're working with new entrepreneurs who do have that mindset around sales, but want to get better at it because they need to run their business?
Yeah. I think the first thing is look at how you define sales. And a lot of people define it as I am asking for money, or I have to convince someone to give me money, or I'm begging for money, or I'm taking people's money. And whenever you describe it that way, if you're a human with a heart, it feels terrible. So I think the first step is I love personally Dan Sullivan's definition of it, which is sales is helping someone intellectually and emotionally find a solution for what's good for them. And I may be slightly tweaking his quote, but the point is this has to be something good for both parties. So when you're selling, you are actually, it's more of a partnership conversation to see if someone is a fit and to see if you guys can do good things together. And it doesn't have to be all attached to, oh, I need to close the sale. I need to get the money. I need to do that kind of thing. It's more of, I'm going to be really interested in the other person and I'm going to aim to help them find some kind of solution, whether it's working with me or even if it's working with someone else or making a different suggestion. So that's the first thing. I think that kind of removes the stigma around sales when you open up your definition of it. I also think when it comes to starting out in sales, you have to feel confident in what you're selling. A lot of times my clients do start charging at a rate that they feel confident they can say out loud. It might be slightly out of their comfort zone because it's just new. It's just new to sell something, but it needs to be what you feel confident that is you can deliver on and, something that where you're not like immediately after you say it, justifying like, "But I can do this and I can do that," and da, 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 da. So, starting with where you're at. And then the last thing is remembering that, the way I see it, like, you have to be selling can be serving. I think a lot of people think it's all about they're in their own heads about me and how am I sounding and how's my offer sounding. And when you make it about the other person, it's more about how can I help this person? How can I include that in my offering? That kinda thing.
Yeah, all great things to keep in mind. And it can be really overwhelming for new entrepreneurs, I think, to kind of process all of this. So how does your fast framework help new entrepreneurs sort of adapt to this new mindset and then implement it in their business? Because you talk a lot about not having the social media overwhelm, which I think a lot of people do not want to be on social media nearly as much as they feel like they have to be or that they already are. So how does your framework help new entrepreneurs sort of navigate this new world for them?
Yeah. Well, I came up with this framework in the sauna one day because I was like, I need a way to
Wait
explain
a minute, did you say in the sauna or in a
in the
sauna?
sauna, in
Okay.
the sauna, not a sauna, the actual heated sauna.
All right, that's a good place to do some
So
thinking. All right, sorry,
that's
continue.
where I reflect. And I was reflecting and I was like, you know what? I feel like my clients need to know a big picture of what components make up their business. And that's how I came up with the FAST framework, and it's an acronym, and it stands for followers, action, sales, time management, and transformation. And what I mean by that with followers is we first have to look at who do you want to be working with? What is your target audience? And then from there, what's going to be your lead generation targets or plan or protocol, we call it in my program, which is basically like what every week, what are your regular things that you're going to be doing to build your audience and get out there and get in front of the kind of people you want to get in front of? And then from there, how are you going to nurture them and convert them to a client, either with a funnel or with a webinar or whatever we end up deciding? So that's the first piece, is like, what's your lead generation strategy and who do you want to attract? The action piece is, how do you create content and offer messaging that's compelling enough that people want to take action? And this one's tricky because it does require some testing. It does require getting feedback. It may require doing like a beta offer first or things like that. So, helping my clients navigate, how do you know what your audience wants from you and start to build that into your content strategy and how you market? The sales piece is how you lead your sales process. So, how do you take somebody who doesn't know you yet to your actual call or your webinar or your sales page? And also, how do you overcome the common objections in your marketing and on your sales calls? How do you make sure that your business model makes sense? Like, do you have an upsell and a downsell, things like that? So, just taking you through the whole sales process. And then time management is, where should you focus your time? Because as you know, Lauren, there are a million different things you can be doing.
Yes.
And when you're trying to be good at all of them and do them all at the same time, it doesn't work. So, helping my clients navigate, okay, what makes the most sense for you to focus on? What can be a later task? That kind of thing. And then transformation is two things. One, what's the personal transformation required to become the business owner you want to be? So, sometimes my clients have to overcome sales fears or fears of being on video, or maybe they're afraid to, pitch themselves for a podcast or something like that. So, navigating those things. And then the other part of transformation is making sure the point A to point B of your offer is clear, making sure it's differentiated, or maybe you even have your own framework. So, helping clients decide what that's going to be, and then using testimonials and things like that in their marketing as well. So, it's really like, when we kind of zoom out, your business comes down to those things. And of course, within each, there's different things we have to address in coaching, but it kind of gives a big picture view to new people who want to become entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and I think that your framework makes it easy for people to sort of follow along, and you also include a lot of material with your framework. It's not just the one-on-one coaching or just the inner circle membership. It's a lot of other materials that go along with that. Can you tell us a little bit more about what those materials are, and then sort of how you developed them and why they are the way they are and how it helps your clients?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm a big fan of anything I can do, and this is good for anybody listening, creating an offer. Like, it's good to think about every step of the way, what kind of hurdles could my client bump into? And you'll start to see this when you're actually working with clients, because they'll say after session 1, "Okay, I, set up my Instagram profile, but I don't know how to do X, Y, and Z." So, this is how you'll create your amazing, templates and checklists and workbooks, because you'll be constantly getting feedback about, oh, shoot, I need to be prepared for when clients have this problem. So, throughout the years, honestly, you're never done, in my opinion. Like, I'm still making new, oh, like, I have an idea for a new, you know, journal that's going to help my clients
A
through
new
X, Y, Z.
productivity tool that you just released for us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So, if there's anything that you can foresee your clients bumping into along the way, there you can make a resource or something that's going to save them time, or a template or something for that to solve it. And so, it doesn't always have to be a, document. Sometimes it could be you record a little motivational pep talk that's an audio or something like that. So, I have things like content templates, email templates, webinar slide templates, things like that, to just be like, if you've never done this before and you need to see an example, or you need to know the flow of it or a goal with it, those things just help clients save time and not have to look around for, examples on the internet.
Yeah. And I think that it's so important too to give structure around sort of the transformation that you're helping people go through as a coach or as a consultant or however you're helping people. How would you recommend that other coaches and consultants sort of figure out their own framework, and then also how they should structure it, how they should price it? Like, what does that process look like for new coaches?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the first thing is to decide what is the top 1 to 3 key dream outcomes or pain points that you feel very confident that your ideal clients would pay you to solve and that you can deliver on. So you want to find that sweet spot of like, what am I really good at providing and what do my people want? And once you know that, then we have to work backwards and say, okay, if I was in their shoes dealing with the, hesitations, concerns, goals that they have, what kind of steps would we probably have to move through? And I do recommend making a very messy, like, let yourself just think about if I could provide anything in the world to my clients, and it doesn't mean you have to go create all these things, but if I could, what kind of steps would be involved? What kind of resources would be involved? What kind of things would I need to teach them? And a good also, just to give you a little structure, good thing to ask yourself is like, what do I want my ideal clients to feel along the way on this journey? What do I want them to know along the way of this journey? What do I want them to be able to do on this journey? So know, feel, do, and there was one other one I talk about, but I can't remember it right now. So, anywho, that'll help you think about like, what do I need to structure into this program? And then you're going to kind of think about, are there any themes I'm noticing here? Like, it is, is one of, let's say your dream outcome you help clients with is you help them resolve burnout. And one of the things, you've brainstormed some steps to help them move through that. And one of the things that you're noticing is there's a lot about stress management or something like emotional management, emotional
Regulation.
regulation. Exactly. So you might put that as one of your quote unquote like framework. We might build a framework around that, or we might organize all your ideas under that section, and that might be a module in your program or something like that. So looking for the themes, and then we can decide what might be either a framework, whether it's an acronym like mine, or if it's a 3-phase system, or if there's kind of a general order they need to go in that we can plan a little, 3-step formula for or something like that. But I think the most important thing to know around this is that your program, obviously, you're still allowed to customize it to what the client needs. So some people get freaked out about a framework because they're like, but every client is different and not everybody needs to focus on emotional regulation. And I'm like, that's fine. But we want to have it as a backbone so we can tangibly communicate the structure of your offer, and you can take it out if you can tell your client, "Hey, doesn't seem you struggle with this one, so we focus on these 2 pillars or these, sections." So, I think that's important to keep in mind because otherwise people will just dwell on this and not decide what it is and, kinda shy away from giving any sort of structure or tangibility to their offer.
Yeah, and I think the key with this too that you helped me understand was that it gives structure to your marketing. Like it makes your marketing message so much easier when you can talk about your framework or you talk about your, approach and your program because it says like I have this thing that addresses this point and I have this piece that addresses this point. And if you're looking for this dream outcome, like that's the whole transformation that this program provides. So I think the key is not only does it provide the backbone, like you said, but it also makes marketing it so much easier because it's all right there for you. You have it all sort of planned out, and all you have to do is sort of translate that into whatever you're marketing it with. So that leads into my next question. Now that we have sort of our framework figured out, how do we then go and find clients, or how do you work with clients to help them go out and find clients to now sell this offer to? What does that process look like with your clients?
Yeah. So, big picture, anything you're going to pick to do in marketing, you're going to pretty much go through these 4 steps to book a client. And I call them the 4 steps of client attraction. And it is connect, engage, pre offer, and sell. And so, what I mean by connect is you need to think about where are you going to be visible, or how are people going to find you, or how are you going to find your people? And so, for some clients, they don't love social media or they get really overwhelmed by it. So we start with local marketing and they form local partnerships. Maybe they do a workshop with another type of service provider who complements what they do. And they're on Google My Business, and then the local paper, like there's things you can do before going online if that freaks you out. But the point is first deciding, are you going to do local? Are you going to do LinkedIn? Are your people mainly listening to podcasts? Are you going to be on podcast? So how are you going to connect? Then we have to decide how we're going to engage. So this is where you want to ask an intentional question or find out what's useful for your ideal clients so that you can deliver what we call a pre-offer, which is step 3, which is a freebie or a lead magnet or something that provides a quick win up front to build some trust. And then we lead to step 4, which is the sales process, where you'd be sharing, you know, do you want to go deeper on all of this and invite to your call or your sales webinar or whatever it is. So the 4 steps, whichever platform or place you're going to market, that's the steps you're going to move through with a potential client. Now, where people get overwhelmed in how to find clients is they could use these 4 steps on any platform or anything. So, and they don't know which thing is going to be the best use of my time and whatnot. So, what I would think about is where have you, first of all, if you've ever booked a practice client or a free client, or you've worked with friends and family before, find out like why did they connect with you? How did they connect with you? What's been the most popular thing so far or indicated that it could potentially work? Like maybe you've gotten an inquiry one time on Instagram, but you've never gotten an inquiry on Facebook, for example. So first just look at like, have I noticed anything that's given me an indication that it can work? And that can help you prioritize which, place to start with. And then the other thing to ask yourself is what can I be consistent with? Because if you hate Facebook with a passion, you're probably not going to want to pick to host your own Facebook group and do Facebook lives with people and that kind of thing. So what can I be consistent with? And then where does your people hang out? So one thing I like to do is brainstorm in different, like I give myself different tabs, like LinkedIn, what groups are they in? Who do they follow? Podcasts, what podcasts do they listen to? Summits and conferences and events, where do they go? What kind of actual physical events do they go to? Things like that. So give yourself almost like a brain dump of where are all the different places and platforms, partners potentially that I could get in front of that have my ideal clients. And then from there, we have to ask your strengths too. So, not to say you can't develop strengths in new things, but if you already are really good on video and you love being on video, well, then we may decide your place you're going to find clients or be visible has something to do with doing guest trainings, going live, doing interviews, things like that. So it is a little bit of a personalized thing, but I think you can reflect with these questions to start getting yourself thinking about where is going to be my best place to find my ideal clients.
Yeah, and I feel like I was being called out a little bit there on video since that's what is where I seem to have evolved to. But I do have a background similar to you in performing, and I was more of a backstage type. But I have been doing videos, since I was little. We used to make like fake what are those things? Infomercials. We used to make fake
Oh yeah.
infomercials
I
as kids, and, like, we would make fun of Ron Popeil and his hair and
Oh
everything,
my
so,
god.
like, I grew up making videos like that, and so it was sort of a natural transition for me to want to make videos in my business because I understood the technology and the editing and, like, so it was really easy for me. So it was easy for us to
Mhm.
work together to figure out, "Okay, obviously video is a good option for you, let's make that work and figure out how we actually implement that in your business." So, how do you help people who sort of come to you and say, I don't even know where to start. Like, I don't know what I like and what I don't like. Do we just kind of throw everything at the wall and see what sticks? When I came to you, I didn't really realize that video was the thing that I wanted. And I tried all the things and kind of
Mhm.
figured out what I liked and what I didn't like. But talk us through kind of what that process looks like when you work with clients or when someone else should be working with their clients to help them figure out what they should be focusing on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think there has to be, if you're just starting out from scratch, you've never tried anything, you've never worked with anyone, you have to be very open and willing to try some things. And as much as I mean, I don't suggest just, as we said, throwing things at the wall and hoping it sticks. I recommend taking an educated guess about, what's going to make the most sense. But I think there's kind of 3 traits that are really important both for the coach and the client. One is you have to be very solutions oriented. So instead of asking, you know, is this going to be like, why even bother doing a post when I get 0 likes? We need to instead ask,
Guilty.
you know,
Been there.
what is, well, we need to ask a more solutions oriented question, such as, what can I do to increase my engagement on my post? Or what kind of platforms or what kind of ways could I start to get in front of other people's audiences since I don't have one or something like that. So we need to turn our questions into those kinds of questions to get closer about what we should be doing. And then I think the other thing would be to be coachable. So if you are, wondering where to start, I think it's important to, first of all, talk with somebody who is further along than you if you can and who's done it before, because you're going to get faster answers about where to start if they can say, well, this doesn't typically work for this market and blah blah blah. So get a coach or get a mentor, something like that, or get a process that can give you structure, like we were talking about before. And then I think the last thing would just be to refine and pivot and milk it instead of adding more new things all the time. So what I mean is like pick something, and just because it hasn't worked in a week or two, you may need to look at, do I need to do more volume of this? Do I need to improve my process for this? Do I need to tweak the messaging on this platform or whatever thing I'm doing before just saying, oh, it doesn't work and jumping to something else? So, those would be a couple things to think about when it comes to getting started. And if you're doing this solo right now, like you don't have a mentor or anything like that, I think you should ask yourself, like, what if I did know a first step and know that whatever step you pick is going to be better than just sitting and doing nothing or complaining or whatever. So I think it also will become more clear once you actually start in getting into momentum and realizing things. But what I don't recommend is spinning your wheels for, 2 years and then saying, okay, I'm going to buy a course now, or I'm finally going to get a mentor or a coach. Cause I see a lot of people doing that too. Or they'll just think, "Oh, I need to get another certification or education or something like that," instead of the business side of things, investing in the business side of things. So just make sure that, you're not falling into the trap of just like, I need more education and in my actual coaching or service that I provide. It's probably the business side of things where you have to maybe get some support.
Totally agree. And I will also say that I waited too long to get support because I was working as a contractor and then also trying to get my coaching business off the ground. And if I had found you a year earlier, then I would have been much further along in my coaching business by the time my contracting contract ended, rather than scrambling when my contract ended and then finding, interviewing tons of business coaches, figuring out which one was the right one for me, and then working with you. And then, it takes a while to get results because you're still like figuring things out and figuring out where you need to be. But if I had done that a year before when I was still fully employed, then I would have had a much better runway to actually become more full time in my business. So definitely agree. Reach out sooner than probably you even think you need help so that you can
Yes.
start figuring out what help you need and who the right person is for you at the place that you're at so that you can, you know, get that momentum going and not be, suddenly surprised that you no longer have a full-time job like me.
Yeah. Well, you bring up a really good point that just it's a good rule of thumb if you're going to start your own business to expect it to take much longer than you think and have a sense of urgency. Like to me, I think one of the reasons why I'm still doing business is because I have like a sense of urgency inside of me. It's not external, not from somebody else. It's internally like, no, I gotta get out there, or I gotta do this, or I gotta answer that client, or and it's like this internal sense of urgency. And just know that building an audience, you can never start that soon enough, whether you're working full time or not. In transitioning, it takes time to build that trust. And especially in today's world where there's so much competing for our attention, yesterday is when you should have started like building an audience, starting to create or brainstorm your offer, that kind of thing. So good point there.
Yeah. So we talked at the very beginning sort of around the mindset around sales and how you have to kind of shift to understanding that it's more of a partnership, what are some other mindset shifts that you see new entrepreneurs really have to make in order to become successful as entrepreneurs?
Well, I think one of the things would be just opening yourself up to consistency. And entrepreneurship is a unique job in that you're not given from a boss, like, okay, here are your steps for, here's what I need you to work on. And you're not given a guaranteed salary. You're not given a guaranteed work hours, 9 to 5. So you really have to learn self management. I think the biggest mindset shift has to be like managing and honoring what you say you're going to do and keeping yourself accountable to that, because it is all on you. And so I think a lot of people think, well, I'm not making any money yet from it. Or like I started my email list, but I only have 5 people, but no one's bought yet. And so I think people don't, when you step into entrepreneurship, especially from the corporate world, you don't know the stats about like, oh, like 3% would be great if they convert to your high ticket offer from your email list. That's just like stats. Or like, 10 to 20% of people will probably convert on your discovery call to being a client. So like I think people just don't know what to expect at all. And so they think it's really they make it a catastrophe that like they have 5 people on their email list and 0 people signed up. But that's such a small volume and number. So that's the first thing, is just like going in knowing that there are going to be stats I need to learn, and that just because I did something once and it didn't yield fruit, that doesn't mean I should stop, or I should say, oh, I'm just entitled for one of those 5 people to sign up. You have to really earn it. So another mindset shift is that offering a free lead magnet, or like even your podcast we're doing here, it you have to make it worth someone's time, even if it's free. That's the second shift. Is like a lot of people think, oh, just because something's free, I don't have to try very hard to sell it, or I don't have to have good marketing language around it. No, you do. People's time is the most precious commodity. And then I think the last thing is just making sure you're acknowledging I think a lot of people think I'm only winning if I hit X amount of revenue by this timeline, or if I'm getting this many clients. And I think it's really important to just, as you go, especially if I'm speaking to the new ones out there right now, to acknowledge your wins, even if it's like you set up a welcome packet for new clients, like an onboarding process or something. You decided what that's going to be. Like every win before you see the client, there's a million steps before getting the clients. So you need to make sure that you're honoring those wins and acknowledging yourself, because otherwise you're going to burn out, because you're like, oh, it's day 2 and I haven't made X dollars in revenue. And so if that's the only thing you see as a win, you're gonna feel very tired as an entrepreneur
And
very
very
quickly.
discouraged.
Yes, exactly.
Well, and one of the things you actually encouraged me to do was create a gratitude journal and actually write down every day, like, what are some things that you are grateful for? What are some things that you accomplished? And it really helped me with that mindset of reframing what success actually was. And yes, I still need to make money, but I have to recognize that there are steps along the way to actually making the money. And it's not just
Yeah.
about that final result of, oh, look, I finally booked a client. And isn't that wonderful?
Yeah, I mean, but now once you get one, it opens it's and which you have, and you're working with clients, you're a paid professional. I think it shifts people's mindset, which is like, but what I want is for people to see themselves as, this is my job and this is my paid profession before they get the client. So I think it's the gratitude journal kind of gets you in that direction, or like becoming or being the person you want to be when you're a paid professional, in my opinion, because it just gets you focusing on the wins, which is what you'd be doing when you have the actual
Mhm.
clients as well.
Yeah, yeah. What other sort of tools and techniques can you recommend for entrepreneurs that are just starting out? So things like time management, especially if they're still working a full-time job, things like prioritizing what to focus on. We talk a lot about that in group coaching of like, I don't even know what I should be working on today. What other tools and techniques can you think of for new entrepreneurs to help them sort of get started and get some momentum going?
Yeah, well, I think one that comes to mind just because it was recent was when you're planning your day. I think a lot of people are overambitious about what we can actually do in a day. And we have these grand scheme projects on our to-do list, and we'll write like on our to-do list, finish website today. And it's like this huge thing, right? So I think it's important to one thing that I do still to this day a lot of the time is make what I call a wish list for the day and then my actual realistic list for the day. So most people just write the wish list and then they wonder why at the end of the day 80% of their list is still there and they haven't finished it. So write down all the things you'd love to do today. Personal, professional, at home with your kids, whatever you need to do and also things that you don't need to do but you want to do, put that down. Then you want to think about what are your top like 1 to 3 goals that you're working towards right now and look at your wish list and star whichever things you think are most important contributing to your top 1 to 3 goals. And then from there, we're going to actually make a real day list where you block out, okay, what are my appointments today first? So maybe you have to pick your kids up at 3, maybe you need to have a meeting with a client at 12, whatever it is, block those out in your calendar. Look at the empty space that's left and break down your wish list top priority tasks that were aligned with your goals into 30-minute or less tasks that you could block into your time blocked day. And make sure that you're adding in room for like transportation time. I have to eat dinner at some point. And then you're going to realize you're going to probably be a little like, oh man, I wanted to get to all this stuff today, but you will at least learn what you can actually accomplish in a day and be more realistic on your timelines. And it will train you to be better at like finishing things within certain times and knowing how long things take you realistically. So that's one thing I like to do.
Yeah, and I also find, I learned this way back in my corporate life that humans are notoriously bad at estimating how long things take. So
Yep.
always, always, always overestimate. Give yourself way more time than you think you need to actually accomplish things. And what I've actually started doing is breaking it down into like 1 to 2 hour increments at the most. So if
Yeah.
I'm creating a lead magnet and I know it takes me on average, 4 or 5, 6 hours, I will actually do 3 blocks of 2 hours as opposed to one 6 hour block, because there's no way that I have time to just do one 6 hour block of work at any point usually. And it means that I can kind of sprinkle it in on my calendar as opposed to trying to do it all at once and then still getting distracted and still getting sidetracked and still having other things I have to do anyway. It's much more realistic to kind of break it out into those pieces and not try to do it all at once. And right now my calendar is very full. I'm battling, I'm doing a lot of bundles and I'm, doing this podcast and I'm launching the podcast next week and doing all the things with that. So having a plan when I come in the morning really makes such a big difference because I'm like, all right, these are the things that I said that I was going to work on today. Here's what I can actually fit in. It's all in my calendar. We talk a lot about time blocking on on this podcast. So yours is sort of a variation on that. So
Love
great
it.
tip.
Yeah, you're
Great
so
tip.
good at that too. I mean, I've seen your ways you organize things. It's amazing.
All my different systems for marking out my work that I have to do.
Yeah.
So we've talked about mindset, we've talked about sort of tips and techniques. Is there anything else that new entrepreneurs sort of need to keep in mind when they're just getting started and they may not know what they don't know? What is it that they should
Mhm.
really be understanding when they're just getting started and, starting off as entrepreneurs and trying to figure everything out?
Yeah, a couple things come to mind. One is make sure that you're not making assumptions about your audience and or well, I respond best this way, so everyone probably responds best this way. Because I see a lot of people making marketing decisions and like steps in their business based on what they just think is is true for everyone just because it's true for them. And that I found that not to be true. So don't make assumptions. Go in with an open mind and actually try to find out from your audience what words they use about their challenges, what platforms they love, things like that. So get a little bit of feedback if you can. And then I think the other thing is you don't need probably what you think you need to be able to get started. So in other words, I see a lot of people say, I need to get my logo going before I take on my first client, or I need to get my website launched before I can start sharing what I do on social media or something like that. And I just, I will tell you, I got a fancy website when I first started my business. I had to end up changing it all because I had made up my own marketing language. I needed to get more market research before doing it. And I ended up making my first sale just with a PDF document about what I do and my program and all that stuff. So I didn't end up needing it in order to get started. So that's just my second thing is ask yourself, if I had to get a client tomorrow, what do I really feel I would need to do or what would I do? And not to say that you should not be developing your long-term assets. I do believe at some point you're going to want a website, but don't let that stop you from getting started, or don't wait 6 months until your perfect website's out to start building an audience and taking on clients and things like that.
All very good advice, and all advice that I remember you giving me when I started, even though I didn't necessarily want to hear it at the beginning. Thank you so much, Hailey, for being here. If there was one last piece of advice that you could give my audience, either something that you've already said you want to reiterate or a new piece of advice, what would that be? What would you want to leave them with?
Oh, good question. What would I want to leave you with? I would say this week, look at your business schedule and look at how much of it is actually connecting directly with potential clients or partners, and how much of it is passively posting, making fancy graphics, editing your website, etc. And ask yourself, how can you shift more to the things that put you in touch directly with human beings who, might want to hear what you have to say, might want to work with you, that kind of thing.
Great advice, and advice that I still need to be reminded of, even after all this time of working together. Thank you so much for being here. If people want to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, well, I do have a free 4 steps to client attraction class. It goes deeper on those 4 steps we talked about earlier and how to actually apply them. It even shares a template one of my clients used to get a 3K client. So that's at haleyrowe.com/client-attraction. And I'm also on Instagram at Hailey_Rowe, HaileyRowe.com, and the Health Coach Nation podcast, which hopefully we'll be coming out with. We come out with episodes every Friday, but hopefully Lauren will be on there at some point.
I'm sure we can arrange that. I will make sure I link all of that in the show notes and in the description below. And once again, thank you so much for being here. Thank you, everyone else, for listening. And I will talk to you all again soon. Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to this podcast, and if it's really helpful for you, I'd really appreciate if you share it and or leave a written podcast review. This tells the podcast sites that our show is useful and it will be promoted to more people that way. Thanks again.